and welcome to Kickstart Connections. I am your host, Lucinda Underwood. Joining me today for our first episode of our special mini season is my co-host, Marc Boudreau. Hi, Marc.
Hi, Lucy. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Excited to do this episode. Really looking forward to it. I mean, we talked about it, I think it was that in December that we
I think initially we spoke about it then, and then
Yeah.
we kind of announced it a couple of weeks ago.
And we announced, because I mean, we did that episode where it was just the two of us, had a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
we're like, why not? How can we make this into maybe just like an educational thing? So,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And share some, well, like I said in the preview, share some stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
yeah,
So without further ado, let's kick off with our first topic, shall we?
let's do it.
So we had a question sent in to us by somebody who they've made that first leap. They've just actually started their business. They're just kind of getting themselves out there. And I guess that's what they're struggling with. And it's, I can certainly relate from when I first started my business is, okay, I have this concept. I have this idea. How do I get my name out there? How do I let people know what I'm doing, I suppose?
Yeah.
Right? It's a big step, and it can be pretty intimidating sometimes. So I'm going to start by asking you, Marc, and then I will share my story on it. But when you first started B&V Media, which is almost 5 years ago now, how did you tackle getting out there and becoming known about?
Well, it's funny because B&V kind of formed out of Brand New V, which was the first podcast that we did with myself and a good friend, Ben Brammer, back in, I think it was 2017, 2018. And it was just, I have a marketing degree, and I was thinking, what can I do that could, lead into something? And at that point, podcasting weren't necessarily seen as like a way to market your business. It was very much like, oh, we're just independent creators, I guess you could say. And you could maybe go on tour, sell advertising space if you get popular. But we decided to start a podcast in that sense, and as well to just like connect with entrepreneurs. It was
Right.
back in, now, especially in Halifax in 2024 now, entrepreneurship is a huge thing in this city. But
Yeah.
even
Wasn't always that way, though.
no, even 5-6 years ago, it wasn't. So I had no idea. I didn't expect, when I said I want to try and connect with the entrepreneurs in this community, people who may have worked in another industry and essentially, quit their job to start a business on their own. And it turns out, we did over 40 episodes, and there was actually like a pretty big community of entrepreneurs, people that were younger, in their 20s, people that were older. And it was really cool to see. And through making all those connections, a few of them were like, oh, I want to use podcasting as a part of my part of my marketing, part of my branding. And that's kind of where it started. We were like, oh, okay, like we can use podcasting for branding. It's a great way to do it. It's a very personal way to do it. And that it was funny because we started it not thinking of what could it be in a marketing business sense, the podcast itself. And then in the end, it was like, wait, we can pivot to a production media company and use the podcast as a tool as opposed to what we were using it for.
Right. It's funny how that evolves, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I heard a few things in there that I'm going to pick up on too was, you talked about making those connections with other entrepreneurs in the kind of various industries, I'm sure. But that's a lesson that a very valuable lesson that I learned, thankfully fairly early on, was to physically get out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I think a lot of us, again, especially when we first start, we start with, okay, how can I market through social media? How can I cold call people? How can I send cold emails and all of these kind of things that, yes, that can have its place in your marketing strategy, but I don't believe has the impact of in-person networking, making connections, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, I guess some of the key things I suppose I did, number one, right away, I joined a couple of associations. So I joined the Center for Women in Business here in Halifax, which is actually based at my old university. I also joined the Halifax Chamber of Commerce and actually got
Yeah.
very involved with them. So I do some volunteer work with them as an ambassador. So I tend to go to a lot of the events. I've made some great connections that way. And really, it's just a case of having your face seen, I suppose, and being able to have those conversations with people where it's kind of, what do you do? And then you get to tell them, right? Another element for me was writing, actually. I started writing some articles myself that I just kind of published on LinkedIn and on my website and those kind of things. That actually led later down the line to a regular column with an industry magazine that I write for now. And again, that's had a huge impact, because I think the key is when you're first, especially when you first start your business, you want to become that voice in the industry, right? And you really want to be seen as being kind of the expert. So writing really helped that. And of course, I started a podcast. This is how I'm here now, and this is how we connected. But again, that has been great. The content that has provided for me to be able to use for marketing has been wonderful. But yeah, so I'd say that's kind of like my top three, I suppose, would be, get out there and network and meet people in person. And honestly, there's another thought here too. Even connect with your competition. I think a lot of people hesitate to do that because they think, oh, it's my competition. I shouldn't be, I should keep everything secret from them. But actually, sometimes people that are in the same space as you can become great strategic partners, right?
Yeah.
So that's always great. And you never know, there could be projects you can work together on. So that's great. So meeting people and then really getting your concepts and ideas out there in a way that is not the more kind of traditional marketing. It kind of avoids the sales pitch, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you think of all that?
No, yeah, I 100% agree in that. I think back to actually how we originally marketed B&V Media, which is, was born out of Brand New View, the podcast. B&V, of course, Brand New View, that's the origins. But we thought, okay, our initial clients were entrepreneurs, small business owners, and networking being that core of getting in the door with potential clients, and marketing the podcast as, hey, like, you can try and get a hold of a CEO or whoever you're trying to get a hold of through messaging them and say, hey, will you go grab a coffee with me or something like that. Instead, reach out to them and say, hey, would you like to be a guest on my podcast? We're in this particular industry, which you just happen to be in as well. And that's how we marketed initially. Like,
that's smart.
Replaced the go and grab a coffee with be a guest on my podcast.
Yeah. And I think people are more likely to say yes to that as well.
I think so too.
Yeah. Because it's kind of, it provides some value for their time as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's interesting. I like that. I want to talk about the flip side.
Okay.
What marketing things have you tried that didn't work?
That didn't
Have you got
work?
any horror stories?
I mean, I do have a few things that aren't like terrible. It wasn't like, oh, wow, like I just wasted thousands and thousands of dollars. But the one that comes to mind immediately is we spent, I think it was like $500 or something like that on putting a little mini ad in a scorecard at a couple golf courses across Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And I don't think we got one response for that, but it wasn't like insane amount of money, but still, it was a bit. A lot of what we do, we believe in, right? Like it's what we offer. We're a marketing company and we believe in the tactics or, the strategies that we use. So we're going to use that for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. What about yourself, Luz?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, when I first started, definitely my social media game was not that great.
Fair.
I was a little lost.
Like us all,
yeah, like us all. But luckily there wasn't really anything that I invested money in that flopped. So that part I'm happy about. But the thing is, here's the thing with marketing too. It's trial and error. Yeah. It really is. It really is. I mean, I guess really the best advice that I could give somebody who's kind of really figuring out how they want to go to market is to, before you do that, have a very, very clear view of what it is you offer, who your ideal customer is,
Yeah.
and what problem of theirs that you solve. Because, you know, if you can hit on all of those points, A, that creates solid marketing, but B, when you have that knowledge, you're going to be able to know better where to find your audience.
Absolutely. And that's
Right.
a big thing, like you touched on there. Like, you don't want to market yourself by saying what you offer, you know, in terms of, oh, we do video marketing, we do podcasting. No, it's you're trying to you're telling a company, here's a problem that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and here's how we're going to solve it.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, hopefully that has answered the question in some ways. If nothing else, it's given you a bit of an insight into our backgrounds and
Yeah.
maybe some of the mistakes that we've made. But keep the questions coming, guys. As I said, you know, this is a special season. They're just going to be mini episodes that we really want to break down some of the questions that you have and really just be able to support some of the newer entrepreneurs that we have out there in the area. But thank you so much for listening, as always. If you do have a question, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach us through social media, DMs at Kickstart Connections Podcast, or you can reach us by email at hello@kickstartconnections.com. And keep those questions coming.